For almost 2 years, Russia built a fantasy around itself, a fantasy where its borders were unbreakable, its military was untouchable, and its civilians lived far away from the consequences of the war it started. Putin repeated the same line again and again. Russia was secure. Russia was strong. Russia could strike anywhere, and no one could strike back. Lavrov reinforced it with arrogance. Trump added political pressure by saying Ukraine had run out of cards, and Russian propagandists echoed the idea like gospel. But then came the night when all those claims collapsed in a single chain of explosions. The night Ukraine tore away Russia's illusion of safety and showed the world just how vulnerable Moscow truly is. It began quietly, almost too quietly for anyone to understand what was coming. A power substation near Moscow flickered out, one of those events Russians barely notice. But then, Novorossiysk, Russia's prized Black Sea port, lit up in orange. Videos began circulating before officials could react. Flames jumped from one pipeline to another. Smoke rose from the Shashkaris terminal. People filmed the sky turning red, while conversations in the streets filled with confusion, fear, and disbelief. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could compare to what happened in Taganrog. Taganrog was not just another base. It was Russia's military brainstem, a fortress protected by layers of missiles and radars. The place where engineers worked on aircraft Russia didn't even admit publicly. A zone the Kremlin considered safe beyond any doubt. But that night, the sky above Taganrog looked like a battlefield. Residents heard blast after blast, each one echoing across the city. Windows rattled, building alarms blared, and in the middle of that chaos was the most devastating loss Russia has suffered in the air domain since Ukraine shot down its early warning aircraft months ago. Ukraine destroyed the A-60. To understand how serious that is, you need to understand what the A-60 represented. It wasn't a bomber. It wasn't a transport aircraft. It was Russia's rarest, most futuristic prototype, a flying laser platform built to wage war in space. The aircraft was designed to blind enemy satellites, disrupt sensors, and give Russia control of the upper atmosphere during any future conflict with NATO. Only two were ever built. Only one remained operational, and in a matter of seconds, Ukraine erased it from existence using weapons Kyiv developed itself. The A-60 had taken decades of research and enormous state investment. It relied on specialized engineers Russia no longer has. It depended on components Russia can no longer buy, and recreating it under sanctions is virtually impossible. When that aircraft burned, a significant part of Russia's future military strategy burned with it. But Ukraine wasn't done. Not far from the A-60's remains sat Tu-95MS strategic bombers, huge, slow, but terrifyingly effective missile carriers used to strike Ukrainian cities. These aircraft were being serviced and modernized inside Taganrog's hangars. Ukraine targeted those hangars directly. The results were catastrophic. Fires swallowed the structures. Roofs collapsed inward. Maintenance equipment, electronics, and aircraft themselves were engulfed in flames. Even if some of those bombers survived, the facility that kept them operational did not. This means Russia's long-range airstrike capability took a massive hit. Taganrog was essential for keeping those bombers flying. Without its workshops, supply rooms, and technicians, Russia's strike fleet grows weaker every week. Repairs slow down, parts become scarce. Aircraft remain grounded. And for the first time, winter missile barrages on Ukrainian cities are no longer guaranteed. While Taganrog collapsed under drone and missile fire, something even stranger and more psychologically dangerous unfolded in Novorossiysk. Nuclear and chemical alarm sirens suddenly activated across the city. Loudspeakers broadcast emergency messages telling civilians to take iodine and shelter indoors. People panicked. Families ran into the streets. Videos captured the fear in their voices. But moments later, officials announced the truth. The entire alarm network had been hacked. Ukraine had not only struck physical targets, it struck the Russian psyche. For the first time in this war, ordinary Russians felt what Ukrainians feel daily: helplessness, confusion, and the dread of not knowing whether the next explosion is close to your home. Russia had insisted the war would never reach its civilian population. On that night, that promise evaporated. And where was Vladimir Putin while his air force burned, his oil terminals exploded, and his civilians panicked under false nuclear alarms? He wasn't in Moscow managing the crisis. He wasn't addressing the nation. He wasn't visiting any damaged site. Instead, he sat comfortably in Kyrgyzstan surrounded by music, dances, and smiles. Cameras showed him enjoying performances while Taganrog was turning into a scrapyard of burning aircraft. His people were terrified. He applauded folk songs. The timing behind Ukraine's operation wasn't random. Just hours earlier, Trump's revised peace plan had been brought into the spotlight. Zelensky said he was open to negotiation. He was ready to talk, ready to consider. But Kyiv understood something crucial. You don't negotiate from weakness. You negotiate from strength. And strength is earned on the battlefield. So Ukraine did what any nation fighting for survival would do. It built leverage. It didn't rely on Western missiles. This wasn't AWACS or Storm Shadow. Ukraine used its own weapons: Bars jet-powered drones, modified Neptune missiles, new generation domestically built UAV systems. These strikes prove something essential to Kyiv's long-term survival. Ukraine doesn't need permission to hit Russia. It has the tools to do it alone. Russia's reaction followed a familiar pattern. Officials claimed they intercepted hundreds of drones. They insisted the attacks were repelled. They blamed NATO, hackers, internal traitors, anything except acknowledging that Ukraine had outsmarted them. But Russian civilians posted videos showing burning hangars, collapsing roofs, and air defense missiles crashing into apartment blocks. The truth was impossible to hide. The biggest strategic shock, however, came from the blow dealt to Russia's airborne radar network. The A-50 AWACS fleet, Russia's flying eyes, is already dangerously small. Ukraine shot down several earlier in the war. Taganrog was the only facility capable of maintaining them. If that facility is now inoperative, Russia faces a long-term crisis. Jets cannot coordinate without AWACS. Air defenses become disjointed. Radar coverage weakens. Fighter interceptions collapse. Russia becomes partially blind. And blindness in war is fatal. Meanwhile, Ukraine's strikes on Novorossiysk and Tuapse hit Russia where it's most vulnerable economically. These ports process and ship billions of dollars in oil each month. When Ukraine disrupted them, the shockwaves hit Russia's budget immediately. Oil is the lifeline of Russia's war machine. Disrupt it, and the foundation of the Kremlin's war effort begins to crack. And then came the psychological avalanche. Airports in Sochi, Krasnodar, and Gelendzhik suspended flights. Civilian aviation froze across the region. Russians were stranded. Videos flooded social media showing confusion at terminals, grounded planes, and panicked passengers. For a population told the war would never touch them, these moments were devastating. Ukraine's strategy is clear. Dismantle Russia's ability to wage war by attacking the systems behind it: logistics, infrastructure, radar, oil, psychology, and political stability. Ukraine knows it cannot outnumber Russia, but it can outmaneuver it. And that's exactly what it's doing. Russia is now facing a truth it never wanted to admit. Its defenses are not enough. Its air force is losing critical support. Its oil network is vulnerable. Its civilians are no longer insulated. And the man who promised safety is too busy watching folk dances to lead during a crisis. Ukraine didn't just strike Russia's bases. It struck Russia's confidence, its myth, its sense of control, and once that sense breaks, it is nearly impossible to rebuild. Please like and subscribe to support our channel.